The Word of God revealed. Howbeit, when He, the Spirit of truth, is come, He will guide you into all truth. St. John 16:13. At the time of physical as well as mental and spiritual distress in this country and abroad, there was a seeking for divine reality. The philosophies of men were inadequate to cope with humanity's problems. Man had reached his extremity. The people and the world were at a place where nothing short of God could help and lift them. Then came the electrifying words, God is here. And in our day and in our time, they found Him, teaching and preaching in the little fishing village of Sayville, Long Island, New York. At his home in Sayville, believers drawn from all walks of life and racial abstractions gathered around the abundant banquet table to fellowship with the living Christ. Never had such words of wisdom and power from the Infinite One fallen on the ears of humanity. The words flowed from his lips in a never-ending stream. Words of life and spirit and love. They were so numerous that the small staff who had voluntarily set about to transcribe them could not keep up with their transcriptions, nor could the press publish them all, and many of these wonderful words have been buried until this very day. Now a larger staff is busy getting them out to the press so the world can benefit. The following are jottings from the early notebook of one transcriber, recorded for the enjoyment and enlightenment of some, and as foundation stones toward a perfect world for others. I thank you, Father. Father Divine's words from the notebook of John Lamb, installment number 56. And you know there are such as that must crack the shell. The Christ must crack the shell of such as that. Don't you see? And such as that the Christ must pass through and break through the shell of limitation, of the mortal version concerning themselves from that standpoint of view, to bring forth the Christ to fruition, universally manifest. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. Now you see, that is true. But as Mr. Lanyon said in his book dedicated to me, Wonderful, if you are asked the question, who are you? And you begin to say that my name is John Smith, I am an American, or an Englishman, or a Frenchman, and I was born at such and such a place, and had so much education, and this, that, and the other, why, you have told everything else but the truth. For let God be true, but every mortal man a liar. So now, to bring out this wonderful truth that we have, don't you see, we must be willing to suffer for that, if it is required, to birth out that into the consciousness of the children of men. To birth out the Christ consciousness to the children of men, and to bring into the conscious realization of the children of men the presence of God in them, as well as in yourself. It was needful for someone in body to take the stand, to be willing to suffer death in the body for the name, that it might be birthed out in their consciousness that God is present. It is wonderful. And when that is birthed out in your consciousness, then it will work for itself. It will universalize itself and bring all to that consciousness that God is in all. Don't you see? But until you are willing to suffer, if suffering would be required, to bring to the conscious realization of the children of men the presence of God, see, you cannot bring them to the conscious conviction that God is present until you are willing to sacrifice the visible for the invisible. When you are willing to sacrifice the visible for the invisible, that willingness will stamp in the hearts and minds of the children of men the consciousness of the invisible as being present. The consciousness of God now fills the air. It sounds like music in the air. The name of the Father is in the air. And then you and they must say, Father is everywhere. For he shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. So we do say peace, and we do say Father, and we do say wonderful. Now, aren't those some of God's names that we have uppermostly in our consciousness? It is uppermostly in our consciousness daily. And when you are even sleeping at night, if you happen to turn over, you will say, Thank you, Father. When you turn over, you say, Oh, it is so wonderful. And peace, Father, in your consciousness, so that it is alive and it is awake wheresoever you are. Any time you wake up, wonderful or Father or peace must also wake up with you. God in some of these names must rise with you. And he truly did arise when you arose. Now, when you wake up tonight, when you go to sleep this morning, I will say now, when you turn over and halfway wake up, why Christ will speak in you, calling his own holy name, saying, It is wonderful. It is wonderful. Don't you see how beautiful things are? You see him reflecting himself through your very countenances, through your very thoughts, and through your mind. It is God in the midst of thee. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. In speaking about a new song that was brought out through one of his followers, He's real, he's real, Father is real to me. Oh, sweet Father, give me the victory. I couldn't live without you. I would die if I doubt you. He's real, Father is real to me. Father said, that was a real inspiration. And the one that composed that song thought it was real. And you would know that it was real too if you had had the experience that the body called Mrs. Coppet had, when right at the time she thought her husband was going to kill her, and he knocked her down and beat her, and all such as that. And she just called my name and went out to the meeting, and I wouldn't let them talk about it. I threw out the lifeline and baptized him and made him to follow in her footsteps. So you see, that would make it real to her. For when she came over to the meeting in Brooklyn that time and got up and testified, and then Priscilla wanted to talk about it after she sat down, I knocked every cursing thought out of the consciousness of the children of men and established a blessing thought there. And I threw out the lifeline and brought him into the kingdom of God. So it is real, and that is why I said, love is stronger than death. Now, suppose he had gone to the law and all such as that. I could have done the same. Priscilla was there and all like that, and maybe that same spirit in his body would have killed somebody by this time after he got out of jail. Now that goes to show you that you cannot cast out DVLs by the spirit of the DVL. You must fast that spirit out. He comes out by fasting and by prayer, by fasting from that spirit of resentment and contention, contending for your rights. Fast from it. And when you fast from it, that DVL will certainly leave you. So that was the way it was there. And she held me so much in consciousness. Now suppose she would have given in. He would have been fighting her up until now if she would have given in and said, well, I am not going to follow Father, for he will kill me if I do. But she said she was going to follow me anyway. And he said he was going to keep her there and all that. But she didn't fight back, but just praised my name with the same zeal and the same determination to follow me just the same. And because she was willing to do that, why then I brought him into the kingdom of God. So that is the great significance of this truth. Of course, each one must be willing to suffer, if necessary, for what he knows to be the truth, and then God can confirm it. So now they always want me there, and say they want the kingdom over there. But if she would have given in to that spirit, she would have never gained the victory. She didn't give in to that spirit, and yet she did not try to physically or personally protect herself. And she did not try to legally protect herself, but she left it with me. It is wonderful. This mighty, holy love, that was a sample and an example. So it is to her that I am real, and that is why. After she sings that in sincerity of heart and mind, it draws me from the bottom of my soul, because it is real. And then there are some few of you all think that the song is real. There are some of you think that I am real. It is wonderful. And because you think I am real, it has brought to your conscious conviction and to others the actual realization of it, because you thought it. Now, it doesn't look like any depression around here, does it? It does not look like there are any depressions around here. And it does not look like there are any limitations from a material, spiritual or mental standpoint of view around here, it looks like there is all of the abundance of the fullness from every expression of life and every desirable expression that can be put forth. Now, isn't that wonderful to think about? It is wonderful to think about it, to just think about it, to think about that Paul said he was a prisoner for Jesus Christ, to think about the insignificance of I as a person may seem to be, and as being a person. But this mighty holy love, it more and more abounds. For where wickedness abounds, righteousness shall much more abound. How can you be ashamed of this gospel? It is wonderful. And then some of those little papers up there in Harlem that have been trying to criticize and some trying to speak in an embarrassing way about me and my work, they see how the general public thinks. And those expressions and those demonstrations there Sunday and today, Saturday, Sunday, and today, if no more, they will cause the people that have desired my hurt to get away from that point of view. They will desire to get away from that point of view of trying to hurt me. For when they try to do it, they will see they help me more. From my standpoint of view, they don't help me a bit. But from their point of view, these so-called persecutions and legal procedures that they raise against me have been, from their standpoint of view, $1 million worth of free publicity, where a natural man would be willing to pay so much or go to prison and stay a certain length of time to learn something. As I heard a man saying the other day, he was doing some work, and he went to prison as a prisoner and stayed there 30 days as a prisoner, and everybody thought he was a prisoner. And so there are people that would spend so much to get such advertisement that I have received, don't you see? And so therefore, it has really proved to them from their standpoint of view, when they think they are trying to hurt me, from their standpoint of view, they are boosting me. And it will give them a reason not to try to bother with me. For if I went ahead and stayed the time out, or what they call time, which would have been about 10 months, that would not have hurt me. My work was going on just as effectively. And now, with all on one accord, and after establishing you in the faith this last couple of days, now if I go, and if I stay, wheresoever I go, and wheresoever I be, it will be the same to you. For I have brought you the victory, and therefore you are not ashamed of this gospel, because it is the power of God unto salvation to every one that believeth. And as one of our speakers today said from the West, in reference to God's quality of being, God being omniscient, God being all intelligence, God being all power, and God being present everywhere, it is wonderful to realize that, and then to see that brought into actuality by the rightful contact. Then that is enough to let you know that it is true and not maybe true. So you see it, Now look at the brightness of the beautiful intellect of God reflected and manifested in you, in every last one of you, the light of intelligence, the height of the perfection of divine love. This divine love, not only physical love, but this divine love, the love of God Himself that transcends all limitations. During a recess at a meeting in Orange, New Jersey, June 28, 1932, there was a banquet at which fathers spoke as follows in answer to questions and remarks. All you must needs do, with or without the body, is to concentrate on the ideal of this body, and the ideal of this body will produce in you and in your consciousness the living sample and example as a factor in your life, as a living statue, as a living monument to always be gazed upon, and not upon the individual personal body, and you will be able to produce and reproduce the same ideal Christ that is in you. And the Christ that is in you will make you and the whole world what it ought to be. It is wonderful. It does not do for me to sit, for when I sit, these things begin to well up. Last night over at Mr. Madison's, it was wonderful. A question was asked, why did Jesus come from such an insignificant place and from such an unknown people, so far as the world was concerned at that time? Father replied, that was to show the significance of God, how that God will take that which is not and will bring to naught the things that are, and will take the base things and the things that seem to be dumb to confound those things that are exalted, and the things that seem to be wise, to show that the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, and that the greatness of this world is weakness and insignificance to the things of God. So therefore, he condescended to the lowest depth, that he might have all the glory and all the honor. As I often say, if I would have come to you and to the general public and let them know that I did have the keys to Harvard and Yale, they would have wanted to give some praise and honor to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, instead of giving the honor to him that has the keys to the penitentiaries, workhouses, and jails. For this cause, I refuse to give any honor to any, even a kindergarten. If any man thinks he has ever taught me to say my alphabet, I will not give him the credit, for I will declare no man ever taught me anything. If he thought he did, I would deny it anyway. The word says, let a man deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Therefore, it is of great significance to see that Christ always did come in the depths of humility to reflect his greatness. Did he not say, the least among you, the same shall be the greatest? Did he not say that the first shall be last and the last shall be first? God's intelligence is the height of intelligence. It is the perfection of the whole universe, and the things of the universe that are to be brought into expression in the future. It is wonderful. So God condescends to come in, and under such governments, lands and systems, etc., to let you know the allness of God and the nothingness of man. It is wonderful. Question: was Jesus' suffering on the cross the same as I would have undergone? Answer: humanly speaking, it reflected it. Humanly speaking, it reflected it. But as many use gas for the extraction of teeth, and to painlessly remove such, there was enough of the fluid of the Spirit of the consciousness of God to annul all the pain, and it caused him not to feel it, although it was essential not to appear as though it... Interruption. The same as it was in my case in years back. Interruption. Question: do the Buddhists, walking on the burning coals in bare feet, exercise the same kind of faith in the power of God to keep their feet from being burned? Answer: certainly, there is one faith. They raise their consciousness to contact the Christ consciousness, which I have striven so hard to get my followers to see, hear, and know, that they can contact the Christ consciousness, and they will transcend the limited expression of the conditions and circumstances of men, and therefore that which would be a condition for men undesirable, it would not have any effect on the Christ consciousness. For as man is far above the minerals, Christ is far above the aches and pains and miseries of man, and therefore he, magician-like, or in a mystic way, what may be termed, especially in Egypt, in the East, where there are many that work magic, termed as black magic, God must do the same in that country, more so than in this country, from that standpoint of view. Moses was a great magician, and God in Moses surpassed the work of the magicians, for when Moses threw down his rod, it turned to a serpent and swallowed Pharaoh. So God must always surpass the works of man, and that which is held in the consciousness of the people and held up as the greatest light of that country. God must master in that situation, don't you see, and reflect and manifest supremacy in that, as in this country, in finances. That is one of the great hypnotics. Finances. Intelligence. That is another. Don't you see? Sociality. That is another. And many of the qualities that I have manifestly acquired, don't you see? To show the mastery over all limited expressions of life. God in every land and country will appear among them. In whatsoever high expression they manifest, God will manifest a higher. You all know finances is the master of this country in the mortal world. Well, that is why I manifest the mastermind in finances. It is wonderful. You see, that is the first thing they want to know. That is why when I master that, that is your God. And that is what has got them stirred up. Then they try to bring some accusation to try to lower the standard of the truth. And they may think it would lower my vibrations that they could handle me. But it is impossible. Then education is another hypnotic. Well now, where does he get his education from? Interruption by Lawyer Thomas. The judge told me that no man could discuss the Bible the way Divine does without an education. And you cannot tell me that he didn't have one. Now, each one of those points are where they want to limit me to some mortal man as being the author of my intelligence, when God is all intelligence. If I choose to walk to New York or to Philadelphia, I can do so. But if I wish to go on an airplane, I can go in the air. But if you happen to see me hiking, don't think that I cannot drive. If you happen to see me hiking intellectually or financially, don't think that I cannot ride intellectually and financially. It is wonderful. You see, many times interruption. You see, if a person chooses to walk. The other day when I got out of the car and started to walk along the street, no one would know that I had been riding. So it is just wonderful to see and to know the way that the Spirit can do and will do. God is all that you need. And we have been taught from the earliest of the existence of Christendom, and we have failed to verify it in our daily actions and transactions. For this cause came I into the world. Counselor Thomas, it was a revelation to me to see how you were so happy in the jail. You didn't seem to worry about it at all. And you didn't ask me to get you out. You didn't ask me how I was getting along with it or anything. Well, that is a wonderful thought to think about. As I was telling Mr. Downs a little while ago, I had not openly spoken about it before. The public should know that, even as I am, are they also. Even as I am, they are also. Now, to think about the way that it was brought about, it is true, there was not any attorney in the world could have won the case under the circumstances. Not that first trial, see, for it was all cut, hewn, and dried, ready to be just fitted in. It is wonderful. And for this cause, it had to be brought about like that I would get the full amount of the policy, and I mean just as much as such a crime could give a person according to the laws of the United States. I had to get just as much with the attorney, with all of the so-called witnesses and everything, to let you see and know that you cannot do a thing, that I am the only one that can do a thing. It had to be. Each one worked faithfully, and it was God. But you could not do it. I had to get the full amount of the policy. Don't you see? Because without the trial, I mean without any attorney, any witnesses even, if I had not allowed anyone to go to the courtroom, I would have got just as much, and it would have come to an end quicker. So it goes to show you that your faithfulness is Christ in you, and you are blessed for being faithful. Don't you see? but to let the whole world know that God is all. I think I had better stop. One of the most wonderful meetings we have ever had was held on Thursday, June 30th, after a banquet at 229 West 135th Street, New York City. This was the night of the usual Thursday meetings at Peace Memorial Church. But as no meeting was held there on this particular occasion, a few close followers were gathered in the apartment. They came in 2 or 3 at a time, until no more could be accommodated. The metaphysical news of June 22nd was read, and referring to a sentence which had been misquoted or misprinted from his message, Father said, "Well, it is all right. We will correct that in any copies we give away. But the general public is not ready for the fine points of this message. They can wait for that till I come again." It is wonderful to think that all wisdom, all knowledge, and all understanding has come as a free gift to mankind and the world. It is wonderful. Father continued, "You see, it is my firm and sincere spiritual desire to bring to the consciousness of the children of men the comprehension of all things. Let them understand all things that I know, all things, whatsoever they may be, because when we all know this, then tomorrow we will learn something else. It is wonderful. It is the fount of every blessing, and this fount of every blessing, it is flowing so free. It is a never-ceasing, flowing fountain of infinite life and love. I am glad to see your faces, knowing that you are me and I am you. Also knowing that Christ in you and Christ in me will make you what you ought to be, and from every limitation, adverse and undesirable condition, set you free. It is indeed wonderful. It is wonderful because it is wonderful. Counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace, that is in you and in me, that is the great and the glorious message. The apostle puts it on one occasion, "To whom God would make known what is the riches of the mystery of his glory among all the Gentiles, is Christ in you." You can plainly see that this is the mystery that I have brought to the world, that God has materialized himself by coming in the flesh. Christ came in the flesh to spiritualize the flesh, and Christ in the flesh came in the Spirit to make the Spirit flesh. The Spirit is made flesh, and the flesh is made spirit. That is the great message that the world cannot understand. I said the Spirit is made flesh, and the flesh is made spirit. Then it is wonderful, for it is Christ in you, the hope of glory, the riches of the mystery of God among the Gentiles. It is indeed wonderful to realize that this infinite love, incorruptible and undefiled Spirit, has condescended to be made flesh and dwell among men. Then when one is unified with the spirit of just men, it may be with spirits of just men, but when one is unified with the spirit of just men, in my consciousness they are not spirits as many, but the Spirit which is one, manifested in many forms. We see this one self-same and only Spirit as coming through many different generations, BJ, better known as BC. But it happened to come all the way down to you, and others as being termed you and me. And that is the glorious victory that has brought to us this great liberty that we might be free as a bird to a tree, as said I while sitting in my prison cell. I declared that stone prison walls and iron prison bars could not hold me. I am free as a bird to the tree. I have declared unto the world that I am spirit and yet materialized. The spirit is made flesh and the flesh is made spirit. That is the great message that the world cannot realize. Truly might Philip have said, show us that mystery, and it sufficeth us. It is truly indeed wonderful. This is the omnipotence of this love, this omnipresent love, this love that goes far beyond degrees into infinitude, the end you can never vision. It is far beyond the human imagination. Therefore you can tell the world it is out of the mortal's realization. God is walking in the lives and bodies of men and actually materializing them, materializing men and spiritualizing both it and them. That is what I came for, to let you know that when you really know yourselves, you are spiritual beings that are incorruptible, undefiled, and you cannot fade away. It is wonderful. This mighty healing love, this mighty holy name that I have impregnated the air with, I have filled the air with the germs of the name of God, the great nature of the whole universe, this mighty holy name that fills the air you breathe. When you inhale, you will inhale Jesus is Christ, and the consciousness of it that Christ is God. It is wonderful. It is wonderful because it has been materialized and made real unto you, the living God manifest on the material plane. That is the great victory among the souls of the children of men. As the Redeemer of men, Christ came. It is wonderful. I think I had better stop. Now, aren't you all glad? I know you are glad. I do not need to say, aren't you glad? For I know you are glad. I do not have to say, isn't it wonderful? For I know it is wonderful. It is not only wonderful, but it is wonderfuler. Now, it is even the wonderfulest of all the earth, and all men are declaring it, for it is so fascinating the whole world has gone after it. They have gone so wild after it, they are coming after me. For it has been declared that you cannot get the soda out of the biscuit without getting the biscuit. The little leaven leaveneth the whole lump, as was said in the word from the biblical quotation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and of truth. That is why I so often say that it is the abundance of the fullness of the consciousness of good. No space is vacant of the fullness thereof. No space in my consciousness is vacant of the fullness of every good and desirable expression of God or of life, whether on the material, spiritual, or mental plane. Now, is not that wonderful? It is wonderful, and it is wonderfuler, yea, it is the wonderfulest of all the earth. Now, aren't you glad? I know you are glad. I think I'd better stop. As I say, and of all of his fullness, have who received? Have all we received, grace for grace, not part of us, but all men, every last one that liveth upon the face of the earth. For in him is life, and that life was the light of men, that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Do you not see the great significance of the conscious realization of the allness of God and the nothingness of man? Therefore you will eradicate every mortal version of the human mind concerning yourself and all things that concern you, and recognize the allness of God and the nothingness of matter. Then someone may say, you have gone nutty. You are gone insane, or you are gone crazy, or you are gone distracted, some may say. But we know that the wisdom of God is foolishness to man, and the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. Now, I don't want to talk so much. Maybe someone else would like to have something to say. It is indeed wonderful. At this point, there was read the Sermon on the Glow Rays. The one father preached at Unity Temple Baptist Church, 132nd Street, New York City, on the last night before the verdict at Mineola, after which he remained in custody. Father continued, I would just like to say that that was just before I was supposedly on trial on the night of the 24th. When the trial began, the supposed trial began in Mineola. On that day it began, on the 24th of May. And being out on bond anyway, I naturally, legally, had the right to come home. I came back to the city that night, and that is what I said. On the morrow, which was the 25th, I returned, and the trial went on, the supposed trial. And at noontime, when Miss Heavenly took the stand and testified to the defense, and also Mr. Lamb, and declared their faith in me to be divine, not only by human title, but by the reality of nature, the judge said he asked her how old she was and where she was educated, etc., and what school. She told him her age and told him she was from Boston University. And he said, I don't believe that you are that old. Didn't believe she was more than 16. So then he said, take that MAN, talking about me, and said that I was not to go free anymore because she was in my home underage. And he told the district attorney to find out the girl that was her sister, as they called her, the lady also that was called her mother, and the gentleman also that was called her father, had been with me, and the one that was called her mother was with me then. and is with me now. And Miss Heavenly was 26, but he said she was not more than 16 or 17. And he said before the jurors, which was a point of conviction in the sight of them, arrest that man. So I was not permitted to go out, and neither was Miss Heavenly permitted to go out that noontime. So they took me, as was said in olden times, and led me back to the hall. And coming back, even in the tunnel where it was no way for you to get through those, humanly speaking, cement or stone walls, they put handcuffs on me, bringing me back to the judgment hall. And I could rejoice and be exceeding glad, for I had stamped in the hearts and souls of men the truth that will stand, whilst the burning world is on fire. If I never say any more than this is and was said before the trial and so-called conviction of the name of God, which is the nature of God that is incorruptible, undefiled, undefined, and unconfined. For you cannot define God, neither can you confine God. Neither is God bound on the east, or on the north, or on the south, or on any side. For God is He that is infinite, without beginning of days and the end of life. With or without a body, I say, it is immaterial to me. If I didn't have a body, I would triumph anyway. It is wonderful. Triumph anyway, with or without a body. This mighty life and this mighty light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, as I said there, and caused men to rise and shine, for the light has truly come, and the glows and the rays of God have risen upon thee. I think I'd better stop. John once was carried away in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and if you contact me, you will be carried away. Do you hear what I say? Oh, it is wonderful. This love is so fascinating, the whole world has gone after it. And going after it, they came after me. It is wonderful. For the little leaven leaveneth the whole lump, and the glory of God is risen upon us. Asia wants this love, if you all don't want it. Africa wants this love, if you all don't want it. Europe wants this love, if America doesn't want it. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. Now, I do not say for anyone to compare this with any other lecture that they have heard, because it came through this body, but find anything that you can compare with it, and then the length of it. This is sufficient. I gave it out there and then, because you heard me say there, before the conclusion of the trial, I had something else to do. I said I must go. I continue to tell you I must go. It is wonderful. I said, when I am supposedly away, still I will be with you, for I am just as operative without the body as I am with the body. For it is not by power, nor by might, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. The consciousness of God as the master mind of the universe, and being conscious of God's presence, and having the name, the nature of God, then what is that? I think it is time for me to go. It is wonderful. You know it is wonderful, because upon such a foundation, why, you cannot fall. You will hold me uppermostly in your consciousness, whilst rolling years shall cease to move, and the sun, S-U-N, shall cease to shine, and still this light of mine shall outshine both it and them, wheresoever men may be found. I think I had better stop now. Wouldn't you all rather hear somebody else talk? It is wonderful. I love to hear the Spirit speak through each and every one, for God is the speaker. You may be the mouthpiece. He lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He has condescended to light you up, and of all of his fullness have every one of you which is, have all we received grace for grace. Now aren't you glad? I will universalize this love. I will impregnate the atmosphere as far as a ship has ever sailed the ocean, or foot has ever trod the soil, with the consciousness of the presence of God, and the consciousness of His majesty, and the allness of this love, and the light that outshines the sun. And all men shall realize that God is in the midst of thee, and ruleth and superruleth the heaven and the earth, and those that dwell therein. Now aren't you glad? I will sit down. I thank you, Father,